Hello there. There are some people born in this world with a sensitized nervous system. Some of them are naturally more intuitive than others. They feel others' emotions vividly, but silently. These really are their stories. Caitlin is a life code 110. Okay, so I'm going to put Caitlin as a life code 110 up here as the whole self. We also have her mother, who is a life code 7. She'll pop there. And we have her father, who is a life code 5. So Caitlin wants to know how she can move forward through her current relationship and health difficulties. Okay, so we'll put those there. And life code 5. Right. Let's have a look at what it is that Caitlin wants me to have a look at and see how her mother and father feature in her dilemma.
Welcome to the Sensitive Mind Show.
Your purpose in life as a sensitive is to experience the deeper parts of the mind, to move beyond fear and to manage your energy, no matter the circumstance. I'm going to show you, as a sensitive, how you can maximize your talents and feel comfortable in your own skin. For show notes and to join the conversation, visit heidisawyer.com/mind. In 2013, I started loving and being kind to myself. I lost 80 pounds. That's a lot of weight. Now, unfortunately, regained. I visited a friend in America and met people. I had many wonderful spiritual experiences. Then in 2015, I learned about narcissism and realized that what had happened in my childhood with my mother. So what's the problem the situation creates? First, I went into anger. I did a lot of research and internal work, but since May 2016, I have been crying every single day. I found a psychologist and Reiki healer, but they both dropped me within a week at the end of August. And at that time, my back went into spasm and I could not move. So what is the question that she would like me to help her with? How do I motivate myself to carry on? Is there anything specific I need to do? Is this relationship ever going to happen? So Caitlin wants a good romantic relationship. She's not currently in a relationship, so she'd like to know whether that actually will happen in terms of some of the issues that she has to deal with. First off, from her question, what she's asking, which is that she's realised that since learning about narcissism, that her mother has some of those tendencies which have impacted her through her life. So I would say the first key thing we need to really look at as far as Caitlin is concerned, because we're in a 110 year. Okay, so we're in this energy of a 110 of new beginnings. So this is the year for Caitlin to feel as though she has a new beginning, and certainly a new beginning with herself. So I've put her into this 110 position at the top here as the whole self, because she's got a wider perspective of where her troubles, where her upset may have originated from. So generally, what do we have in terms of the life code dynamic between a 110 who's aware and an unaware life code 7? So this is really what Caitlin is asking. How do I deal with this if I've got an unaware life code 7 mother who has had narcissistic traits, or she realised that she had narcissistic traits during her early life experience? Now the thing is, when someone has narcissistic traits, do we see them purely as self-absorbent? So they're completely self-absorbed, or sprucing themselves in the mirror. That's really what most people would kind of flippantly say narcissism is. But narcissism, in terms of a close dynamic, especially the closest one that really should be there as our foundation and our formation in life, between mother and child, if that feels disrupted, yes, of course, that's going to have a grieving effect in terms of what Caitlin is experiencing. Now, as a 110 and a life code 7, how does that dynamic show? Well, an unaware life code 7 mother will be very emotional. So people with narcissistic tendencies, narcissistic characteristics, which is always putting themselves first ahead of anybody else, is that as a life code 7, those will be very dramatized. So I would say most likely every time Caitlin has tried to approach anything as far as the mother is concerned, it will become heavily dramatized from the mother towards her. Okay, so as that life code 7 dynamic, which is, whoa, unaware life code 7, explosive, very strong emotions, especially when challenged, as a life code 110, where life code 110s are the only life codes who are split between two different aspects of the self, which is how they experience themselves in the everyday world and their deeper knowledge, deeper meaning in life. So Caitlin has moved into the 110 of deeper knowledge, deeper meaning. So she needs something deeper in her life. Hence this new knowledge of what a narcissistic character is gives her insight into her early life experience. So Caitlin needs depth now in her life as that 110. She'll be looking for aspects of depth, especially in this year of 110 in terms of new beginnings. So the question is she going to be able to heal that dynamic between herself and her mother? I suspect not, but how can she come to terms with that so she can feel more comfortable about moving on to allow a romantic relationship in her life where she doesn't feel upset and doesn't feel that there is a possibility of that person abandoning her? Because quite often, we find ourselves without a relationship if we have a really strong fear of abandonment or choosing inappropriate relationships, because if we've got strong fear of abandonment, it's easy not to get too involved with someone. But clearly Caitlin is at that experience in her life where she has enough self-knowledge to want to move beyond that. So what we need to have a look at is how can Caitlin move beyond the troublesome scenario of her emotional interaction with her mother. So how does a life code 5 come into that as far as this parental dynamic? Well, Caitlin hasn't physically mentioned her father, other than what would be key is whether we can see if there are any father type things which also holds her back from an emotional interaction with a romantic relationship. Now, a life code 110 and a life code 5 kind of matched with a life code 7. Unaware, you could end up with a life code 5 and a life code 7 tag teaming and ganging up on a life code 110. Could find that. Why? Well, it then deflects from their own situation and their own, and looking at themselves. So sometimes you do find that a life code 5 and a life code 7 will, if they've got a third person to gang up on, as unaware life codes, they will do that. They will gang up on that person. Why? Because ultimately a life code 5 and a life code 7 together don't usually get on. But if they have an external focus to place their direction on, especially if it's unkind or unsavoury, that becomes a focus so they don't have to look at themselves. So we'll have a look to see whether there is any energy, as far as that's concerned, around Caitlin that she would do well to be aware of, so that she can start to feel at peace with herself and be able to heal these painful emotions that she's going through at this point in her life. Okay, so I'm going to have a look from my, just bear with me a second, giant stack of archetypes. So we're going to have a look through the archetypes to see what we're looking at. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to have a look at Caitlin and see what's going on in her energy at this time that is creating all this upset. What is her psyche trying to release? Obviously, it's grieving around a realization that her mother's characteristics are something that's very real, as in she's identified that other people behave in this particular way. So now her body almost has permission, I would say, to grieve and release. So let's have a look to see what it's up to as far as that's concerned, where she's at, and maybe when she's going to have some relief from that releasing of pain. Let's have a look. So, thinking of Caitlin, let's have a look and see what we've got. Okay, so interestingly, we've got the Prince. So, this is interesting because how does this show as far as this is concerned? Well, already we can see, because we have the Prince here, there is going to be some father involvement. But I suspect how that this will show in what Caitlin's body is trying to release is the fact that she's felt let down by the Prince. Is a rescuer. It's someone, it's this line of protection. Who's going to protect me? Who's going to look after me? Well, I suspect that what Caitlin is releasing is the fact that she will feel that this life code 5 father of hers did not communicate or support her, and did not support her when she was dealing with a difficult mother. And so Caitlin's core self is trying to release the fact that she doesn't feel supported by a male. Hence the reason why at this particular moment in time it's tricky for her to find herself emotionally involved in a relationship. So I suspect right now what is happening is that even though it feels uncomfortable, it feels painful that she's been crying for a long time, and yes, you would say, well, surely is that a line of depression or along those lines? Well, it could well be that the core of her is releasing this pain, that actually the deep pain is that she never felt protected. That she didn't feel protected and doesn't feel protected by a male energy, so now finding it hard in her life as an adult to allow that male relationship in. Okay, so let's see if I'm right as far as that's concerned and see what we get as far as the father is concerned. So bear with me whilst we do a big shuffle. Okay, so now I'm thinking about Caitlin and I'm thinking about the dynamic as far as her father is concerned. Let's see what we have. We have the priest. Now that's interesting. So I would say what Caitlin's experience of her father was in her early stages of her life will have been that her father wasn't emotionally present, wasn't emotionally available. Now, quite often you get that around an unaware life code 5. Why? Because they reflect the warrior. Okay, the warrior has to be self-sufficient, it is there for short periods of time. It's that kind of doesn't like to show weakness. So quite often, people are brought up or, brought through generations in their lifetime where it's unmanly to experience too much emotion, to show too much emotion, to be too emotionally present. It's almost as though that's somehow some kind of weakness. I suspect that this is what has been around Caitlin as far as her father is concerned. So yes, I would say with this priest here that it's highly likely that this is what Caitlin is actually grieving, is that she felt her father was emotionally unavailable, certainly not present, because a priest is isolated, in order for her to feel protected and therefore deal with the aggravation as far as her mother is concerned. So I think now what we'll have a look at is the mother's energy, is that life code 7, because I don't think it's ever going to change. Quite often with narcissistic temperaments, it's about learning how to manage those people because they're deep fear is ever being found out, that they are actually deeply insecure. So they will hide that by a top layer of unpleasantries. And I would say for Caitlin, a mother would be too far gone as far as that's concerned. In order for any line of confrontation, I would say that's probably not a good place for Caitlin to tackle it from, because this is about Caitlin now healing. Okay, so let's have a look to see what aspect of Caitlin's mother does her psyche need to begin to accept in order for her to heal. Let's have a look at it from that perspective. So I'm thinking about Caitlin and this dynamic, and let's have a look and see what we get. What is that line of acceptance? Okay, we've got the prostitute here, which is really quite interesting. So this is interesting because it shows in two different areas. So what it suggests, first of all, is the prostitute archetype is about how you sell yourself into the external world. So we can be very clear here that Caitlin's mother sells herself out into the world. She'd sell someone's soul if it was worthy, if it had a price attached to it that was really quite okay for her to do. And I would say probably at some point or another Caitlin has felt that. She has felt that pretty much her mother's sort of sold her soul, metaphorically speaking. What does it mean as far as Caitlin is concerned? It's about her adjusting how she feels that she has to adjust herself consistently to be agreeable to somebody else. So if Caitlin can own this energy and her upset around that this constant upset about having to always adjust into something acceptable, and that whatever she wasn't acceptable as far as mother is concerned, actually had nothing to do with Caitlin. It is not reflective of who Caitlin is or was as in her younger years, and it was everything to do with her mother's perception of the world, and nothing actually personal towards Caitlin, even though that's a hard thing to be comfortable with. But sometimes when we can acknowledge those things and the kind of rawness of those things, and allow ourselves to own that, especially as a sensitive, as an intuitive sensitive, some of our lessons in life are actually about owning what's uncomfortable to the extent where we feel worthy of letting it pass through and heal. Quite often what we'll do is stop allowing ourselves to feel something and disassociate right at the point of a huge breakthrough. Now for Caitlin, I suspect that her body keeps taking her to that edge moment of doing that because her back went into spasm where she couldn't move, which is very symbolic, hugely symbolic of this whole dynamic in this relationship, which is that she would have felt in her early life that she felt trapped enough where she couldn't move. So she couldn't move. So her body is trying to show her that sense of release. Now for her, right now, that sense of release is that actually her mother's characteristics were not Caitlin's fault. And sometimes, our lessons in life are about learning that actually it wasn't our fault. Even though, especially, if you have a narcissistic parent or had a narcissistic kind of foundation in your life, you've been trained to accept everything is your fault. And especially as a sensitive, because you will then hold it in your body and feel that somehow or another it is your fault. So for Caitlin, I would suggest that her first starting point is actually to kind of go in and mentally communicate with her back. So that's the end of this episode of the Sensitive Mind Show. If you've enjoyed it and found it helpful, do share it with your friends. So to be sure to join me next week, where I will be looking forward to giving you an alternative perspective on your relationship dilemmas. Bye for now, and let me leave you with this. For more great free content designed to support your purchase of my book, Highly Intuitive People, 7 Right Brain Traits to Change the Lives of Intuitive Sensitive People, please visit finallyfeelunderstood.com. There you can subscribe and download for free the meditation specific to today's episode. If you have already read the book, then it's time for you to receive exclusive access and support from me and your fellow intuitive sensitives as we go deeper together along this proven 7-step path by joining us in my monthly membership program called Heidi's Circle. There you can ask me anything in a safe and private environment, and I will answer you live. Join us today by visiting healmyinnerworld.com.